insight and direction what we need to do. Amen. Okay. So just keep me in touch. Let me know what's going on, so we can be assisted or help in some kind of way, some sort of acknowledgement on your behalf from us. Amen. So we thank God for you. Amen. You know, and like I said, it's a tough time of the year. It's any time of the year is hard to lose somebody. The holidays always seem to make it even more difficult. Amen. So we're going to go ahead and continue. Last week we started a message, and this message is part of our theme for this coming year. And that message dealt with moving forward in faith. So if there's one word that I hope that you will allow to be part of your repertoire and your daily thought process and your conversation, is the word forward. So, God bless you, Mother. I didn't see you last week. Happy New Year's to you. Amen. Hallelujah. So we have some. Okay. All right. Okay. Take care of our mother. Amen. So we want to give you direction for 2019. And that direction is forward. Moving forward. Too many times we get stuck and we get settled and we don't tend to do or make changes that we need to make. So we want you to move forward this year. Forward in faith. We talked about some ways to accomplish that. We looked at several principles, what we need to do as we move forward in faith. We talked about walk in the light, proceed with trust, don't take counsel from fear, wait patiently for revelation, know that God will provide. Amen. So these are the things that we begin to touch base on last week concerning this idea of moving forward in faith. What we want you to come to an understanding is, what is your faith walk for this year? What do you want to move forward in? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Okay, the word is forward. Where do I want to go forward in? What things I want to accomplish? What things or goals that I need to set? And all human beings have a need, right? We have the needs and concerns in our family life, our work life, our social life, in our private life, in our finances, and in every other aspects of our lives. We all encounter situations that will cause us to need or want to move forward. Maybe your goal this year is to move forward in your family relationship. Maybe it's just building stronger family ties and family unity and just trying to bring your family together as one. Maybe that might be your goals, and you want to move forward in it. Maybe your family isn't as close as it should be. Maybe your family doesn't gather as often that they need to. They only come together when there's death in the family. The family come together and celebrate each other. But it doesn't give you opportunity to celebrate good times. We want you to be able to move forward in the area of family. Maybe it's a family issue that you need to work on. The writer says here also, maybe it's work, your work life. Maybe there's something at work you're trying to move forward to or in. I know for me, I'm needing to move forward because it's almost a requirement for me to move forward. Some of the recommendations that was given to me this past week as far as the business go, wanting me to prepare little history concerning the business and what the business is about and the vision of the business. That's really what it comes down to, the business, the vision of the business. What is the business all about? So that is one of the areas that I'm working on this year. as far as moving forward in faith, because my information is going to be posted statewide. So they'll have it on the website statewide. So I need to be able to present and to market myself as a company to go forward, that others might see what abilities and what qualities and what services that we provide as a behavioral supports company. So this is where I'm and the direction I'm going in. So maybe you might have some things that you want to do as far as business goes and work-related issues. Maybe your goal this year is to be a better you at work, not to allow people's attitude to change who you are, not allow the atmosphere or the environment that you're working in have an effect on you, that it begins to cause you to not shine as a believer in Christ. Maybe it's in your community, maybe it's your neighbor, maybe you can't get along with your neighbor, maybe you need to move forward in faith and deal with your neighbor issues. Maybe that neighbor gets on your nerve. I don't know if you ever experienced that, you know, and you want a better relationship. And I watch Judge Judy sometimes and watch the conflict between neighbors and how those issues can really cause you to be uncomfortable in your sanctuary environment, in your home environment, where you go to rest and relax and wanting to find peace, and you have issues with neighbors. That's not a good place to be at. Because home is supposed to be a place where you can just kind of lay back and just take the guard down, so to speak, and just relax. And when you can't do that, it can create issues. So maybe it's this idea of a social life. Maybe you don't have much of one. I'll give you mine. And you'll be saying, I think I like mine better. Especially when the demands of life and having to be here and be there and the responsibility that comes with that. So maybe it's a social life. Maybe it's just simply your own private life that you want to move forward with. Maybe there's something in you that you need to work on. Too many times we want to work, especially when it comes to couples. This is really an issue for couples. We want our spouses to change. We want our spouses to do better. But see, we need to look within ourselves, because if we're not healthy, it really creates an equation to the problem that we're having at home. Because it takes two. It really takes two. So that's in any relationship. I don't care what relationship it is. It's a spousal relationship, if it's a friend relationship, if it's just a co-worker relationship, it really takes two. Sometimes we want to look at the other person, but maybe it's a personal thing that we need to work on within ourselves. We get upset with people, we get discouraged by people, and you know, I can be discouraged today, but of course the devil would like for me to be discouraged. That's his whole aim and goal, to discourage me. But I come to realize if I'm going to move forward, I can't get stuck in other people's issues. I can't allow other people's issues to keep me from moving forward in faith to where God is wanting to take me. I got to keep going. So we need to know, maybe it's just our finances that we want to move forward in faith. And in order to move forward in faith in our finances, it is very important that we learn God's principles in handling finances. If we don't look to God's principles in handling finances, our finances will never be what we need them to be, or what we want them to be. As for some of us, it will never be what we want it to be. But we learn to live within what God has blessed us with. And if we learn to do that, it will help us to be more satisfied when it comes to our needs being met in our everyday situations. What are you believing God for? That's the question you need to ask. What are you believing God for in moving forward in faith? What do you want God to do for you? First and foremost, we've got to learn to put God first. We've got to understand the principles that is set for us as we go forward in faith. Walking in the light, proceeding with trust. Don't take counsel from fear. Wait patiently for revelation. Know that God will provide. To walk by faith means that you recognize these unseen things as reality and live your life with the belief in eternal consequences and rewards in mind. So what am I saying? The unseen things, the things that God begins to speak about in His Word when He talks about we walk by faith and not by sight. That's what He tells us in Hebrews. We walk by faith and not by sight. If we're walking by faith, we got to remember what Genesis or Galatians 6 and 9 tells us. And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we will reap if we faint not. Paul tries to get us to understand how important for us not to get weary in well-doing. But for most of us, we get so discouraged, we become so delusioned by our circumstances, it causes us to begin to veer off to the left instead of staying on course to what God is trying to get you and me to see, His ultimate plan and purpose for our lives. So we have to recognize that the unseen things are more reality. We talked about there's another reality. There's another reality to what you see right now and what you experience right now. You see things, you see objects in this sanctuary. And that's a reality, but there's another reality behind what you don't see. There's a spiritual world, amen, beyond our natural eyes that we don't often think about or focus on enough as believers or as God's people. Because we're too busy focused on the things that we see, and it begins to deter or distract or cause us to veer off to what God doesn't want us to do. You have faith in their existence. Speaking of these natural items, don't you know your life reflects your faith? Your life reflects your faith. How you live reflects your faith. How you walk reflects your faith. How you serve reflects your faith. How you worship reflects your faith. How you live reflects your faith. That's why he reminds us, again, what did the scripture say like last week in Galatians 6 and 9? For he that sowed to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that sowed to the Spirit shall reap life everlasting. See, our lives reflects our faith. If I'm doing everything everybody else doing and saying that I'm a believer, does that really reflect Christ in me? People will look at you like, I'm talking about the unsaved folk. My brother-in-law, he was good at that, looking at people's lives. You say you one thing, you better live it. That's how the unsaved folks see us. That's how the world sees us. If you say you saved, they're looking for something. Amen. They're seeing how your life reflects what you say. Do your walk match up to your talk? Do our walk match up to our talk? That's what it comes down to. So what are you doing? Where are we going? How are you moving? Are you moving forward, or are you stuck in a place is an example of one moving in faith when it talks about the life of Abraham. Genesis 12, starting at verse 1, says, "Now the Lord has said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So Abraham departed, as the Lord has spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abraham took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came." Now here we see an example of a patriarch of faith, Abraham. He's mentioned in the Hebrews as one of the patriarchs of faith. We see him moving as God had instructed him to get out of his country and go to a place that was unfamiliar to him, and a place to where he didn't even know where he was going. And where Abraham was called out of, God called Abraham out of Ur unto the Chaldeans, the modern day Iraq, to go to a land that he will show him. Even though it was unseen to him, it was a whole different reality to what he had known. And God was taking him to a whole new place of experience. And God was going to show who he really was. And what did Abraham? Abraham had obeyed and walked with God and did what God had commanded him to do. If we're going to move forward in faith, we got to obey God. We got to stop doing what we want to do. We got to stop doing what other people are telling us to do. We got to stop doing what the devil intimidates us to do. Because when God begins to call you to a life of faith, sometimes that means that you are walking in a place that is unfamiliar to you. It's a place that you have no real concept of everything that's going to happen or take place. And that can be a scary place. I've been there, and I'm sure God will continue to take me there when it comes to this walk of faith that he has me on. I can see from the beginning of my life, we shared testimony last week, God just bringing me off of my job into ministry and back into education and college and now to a business. And it's still a walk of faith. There's still many challenges that I go through the process to where God's called me to. And even when you don't see it or you don't understand it, you got to trust God for it. See, when Abraham began to walk in the light of what? The light of God's word commanding him to do a specific task. He told him he wanted him to leave where he was from and to go to a land that God would take him to. Abraham didn't know all that was going to be involved in that. He wasn't sure what God was going to do through this whole process. But he obeyed. See, obedience, that's what brings the blessing. It's not the sacrifices we make, it's the obedience that brings the blessing. Until we learn how to obey God, we hate that word obey. And I believe sometimes when I give instructions concerning our lack of attendance, our lack of being on time in church, it really comes down to people just don't want to listen to what you got to say. They do what they want to do. But if God doesn't do what he needs to do for them, or if something happened in their lives that is traumatic and turmoil, who's the first person they blame? God. God gets the blame. Hallelujah. When you go buy those cars and those trucks and those houses, when you go to the store and buy those new clothes, you don't need much instruction to do that, do you? Hallelujah. Amen. That's easy to obey. God tell you, go here, and somebody got a blessing for you. You'll be right there, Johnny, on the spot. I remember that happened to me one time, and I got a call, and just moving by faith, a testimony of faith. And I believe I was in Greensburg when I got the call, and I was asked to Westmoreland County, somewhere over there, and I got a call. Somebody wanted me to meet them on 51. And I'm thinking, boy, this is going to take me all the way out of my schedule and my route. And I said, and they just needed to talk to me. I said, okay, I'll be there. And I moved in obedience, and I did what I needed to do because I felt a prompting of God to say, to tell me, go, go ahead. Just take me out your way. It's going to cause you to be a little late behind schedule, what you want to get accomplished, but go. And I went. And when I got there was a blessing for me. And that person gave me $1,000. Amen. And I had no clue that's what they was going to do for me. I had no clue that's what they were going to give me. See, but if I would have said, no, this is all, I'm not coming over there. You take me all out my way. I'm not doing what no. I was obedient because I heard the voice of God prompting me to go. And I went. And on the other end was $1,000 of blessings for me that I had no clue was coming. So it's the obedience. See, I could have said, no, I'm not going to go. See, this is why Abraham was blessed. Not only was Abraham blessed, but he began to walk in the light of God's word. And in walking in the light of God's word, God did not reveal everything to him at that given moment, but over time, and it took some time, Abraham, he was called to do the will of God. Let's read more about this patriarch of faith. He believed God and the promise that God gave him concerning a son, because Abraham not only desired to obey God, but he was desiring a son. This is where we're talking about family. Sometimes, we need to deal with family issues. And sometimes we want to blame others in the family, but sometimes we need to look at ourselves of why families aren't as close as they need to be. I don't know about you. I believe Sharon and got more kids than we do, but there's 14 of us. But how many was there, Sharon? 18. See? So, and in that family of 18, there was different personalities. Everybody, even though they were brought up by the same parent, there was different personalities. And those personalities can cause people to clash, because as we get older, we begin to establish our own personality. I watch my grandkids, and each one of them got their own different personalities of who they are, despite them being raised in the same family household. They each got their own personalities. We take on personalities as we become older and become adults. And sometimes those personalities can be welcoming, and sometimes not so welcoming. But it's who we are. But do our differences have to separate us? They don't have to separate us if we learn how to respect one another's personal direction in life. I don't have to agree with you. but I can still respect you. You don't have to agree with me, but you can still respect me. And I've learned to do that in life because I got it earlier in life, just being in a large family group and having many different people around us throughout our lifespan. We have been able to, it shaped us, if you will. It molded us into who we became as adults. But I like to think for most of us, we have our issues as a family. We all have issues, you know. I often say, how do you know you have issues? Well, you know, because some of us got one name, another one got another name. So there's issues. You know, I call those issues. I got to remind my kids and my family, the only Tuckers they're related to is the immediate family and nobody else. So remember that. So somebody come up to you and say, I'm a Tucker. I'm like, no, you're not. But that's just life. That's what we call life. Life happens, and sometimes when life is happening, you may not have a part to play in that happening, but you are the beneficiary of what took place. So because you become the beneficiary of what took place, you really got to trust God and look to God as the light of your life, that you will be able to shine in the midst of the dark places in life that you experience and will experience. And if you have not experienced, you will experience, because that's just how life goes. Sometimes we find ourselves in dark places and we're not sure about the light of day concerning those issues, but we can trust in the light of life who comes from God. And I tell you, when he begins to shine, darkness got to go. Because in the beginning, the Bible said darkness covered the face of the earth. But when God said, let there be light, light shined, and darkness had to obey from what God had declared in the beginning of creation. And God is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And if he begins to speak to the dark places in your life, amen, and tell you to move forward in faith, I guarantee you, you will begin to see the light of God shining in the midst of your dark places, and you'll see the glory of his anointing. Hallelujah. Because that's the kind of God we serve. Hallelujah. Abraham had to move by faith. He had to move in obedience. Obedience brought him the blessings. Hallelujah. So we see God moving. We see God directing. We see God instructing. But it took Abraham to obey. God can tell us again and again and again, but it's up to us if we obey or not. God is not going to force himself, but if you don't obey, God will cause and enable situations to happen to bring you into the place that he needs you to be, even in all your resistance. So the Lord instructed Abraham. Abraham trusted in the light. He proceeded with trust. He didn't know what was going to be out there. He didn't know what was going to happen, but he proceeded in trust, knowing that God was going to be the provisionary for his life. If God tells me to do certain things, you need to trust God that he will meet every need in your life. He will accomplish what you need him to accomplish if he spoke to you to do it. If it doesn't happen, then you got to question yourself, God, did you say do this? You need to know that you heard from God clearly and specifically, and you're not operating in the flesh. Not that only did Abraham trust God, but Abraham found himself in a position where fear had tried to counsel him in his moving forward in faith. Abraham was in a country, and the king of that country began to look upon his wife and seeing how fair Sarai was. Fear began to counsel Abraham from this perspective. He began to look at the strength of men instead of looking at the strength of God. Even the best of us who have been called to faith sometimes, amen, stumble along the way. Abraham stumbled in this area because he thought his life was going to be in was fearful for his life. And when the king took Sarai and was getting ready to connect with her inappropriately, God came to him in a dream and stopped the king. God is so good. Amen. With every temptation, God will make a way to escape. So when you find yourself in a position where you're tempted, and this king was doing what kings do during his time. He's king, he can do whatever he wants, because I'm king. Right or wrong. That's how they responded sometimes. But God intervened. And God's intervention saved the king, and it kept Sarai from being violated. God wants you to understand that he will intervene at any given time you want him and need him to. But you got to trust him. You got to trust God. You can't allow fear to counsel. Abraham began to allow fear to counsel him. Give him direction of what to do, even though it wasn't the right thing to do. Fear will cause you to make bad choices. Fear will cause you to run when you need to stand still. Fear will cause you to become lacking in trusting God. Fear is the opposite of faith. Remember that. Then we must wait patiently. Abraham had to wait patiently for revelation. Everything didn't come to Abraham all at once. God began to speak things to him, began to tell him some things, that he was going to what? He was going to cause him to be a father of many nations. That was a revelation for him. But did it come at that given time? No, because Abraham didn't even have a seed to be his heir at that given time. Abraham and Sarai was childless. And they had to wait patiently for God's revelation to come. But God is always faithful. And I'm about to close. God is always faithful. How God became faithful to Abraham? He became faithful for this cause. He caused him to be able to have a son in his old age. And Sarai, amen, to give birth in her old age, when she was past the birth-giving stage of life. And God did what he promised he would do. It started out with one son of promise. But we know there was another son involved, and we're not going to get into that. But we need to know that God said if he said he's going to do it, he's going to do it. Amen. How is it unique when God gave him the son of promise? He asked Abraham to give the son back. Abraham offered Isaac up on the altar in Genesis 22, 1 through 19. But God was faithful, and God did not allow him to take the promised son or the promised seed. But God showed his ability to provide at a time when you think that there's not enough of provisions in your life. Do you ever experience that? That sometimes you feel like there's not enough provisions in your life, and you're wondering how God's going to provide that need. I've learned this. There's times where God will use me to be the provision, to help others. But then there's time God don't want me to do that, because God wants them to see his hand involved in it. Because God don't want me to get the glory. And sometimes, as we provide for others in our lives, they look to us and want to give us all the accolades, all the hoop and holler. But you know what? It's God who's really providing. So anytime you're blessed in life, anytime that you receive a blessing, Know that God is the provider. He is the provisionary. He's the one that makes a way, not man. He may use man as an instrument of his hand to accomplish his will. But it is God that is the provisionary. And always remember that. Hallelujah. Yes, as men and as single mothers and head of household, we go to work every day and we do what we need to do. We work, we take care of our household, we take care of our family. But we need to know that it is God who's making for us to accomplish what we've done. Amen? Amen. I know for me, I know it's God. God is the provider. So as we close, we need to, and I hope we understand the importance of Abraham's life and walk with God. That Abraham can continue to be a father of faith for you and I. That we will continue to walk as God has called us to walk, by faith and not by sight. Amen? Amen. So as I close this afternoon, maybe there's one who don't know Jesus and the pardon of your sins. We want to give you opportunity to come to know Jesus. Hallelujah. Stand to your feet with me for just a few moments of stretching. Get your blood flowing if you can. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. But this year, we want to hear a lot of messages dealing with faith and moving forward, and seeing examples of those who've moved forward and how they were able to accomplish the task before them. And you've heard many of these stories time and time again. But just like God had told the children of Israel, rehearse these things in your children's ears from generation to generation. Time and time again. Don't stop. Continue to do it every opportunity you got. Amen? Amen. So maybe there's one who don't know Jesus and the pardon of your sins, and you want to give them opportunity to come to know Christ. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. If you desire prayer, we will pray with you. Hallelujah. Glory to God. But we're going to do prayer. We're going to go ahead and close up. Too many times we take time to pray for folks and then we hold everybody else up. But those who are going to come for prayer, let us close off first. And if we still need prayer, we'll take time to pray with you after the service. Those who stay up front,